trigger warning to this video. There's going to be some heavy things that are talked about in regards to children and other issues in regards to SA. But this is a very special video. And when I tell you, I was so defeated on last night because I had this video created, and because of the heavy topics in it, and I think because of the spiritual overtones in this video, I've never experienced a whole entire video just being erased out of nowhere. But that's what happened. And so it took me a whole nother day to try to recreate it again. And this is about who I consider is a high priest. And that's Jeffrey Epstein. He was a high priest on this island that he owned, his Epstein Island. He has two properties that are in this current ongoing case. However, in these files, however, the island that was in the Caribbean, in Bahamas, where this temple was located, and it had so many depraved activities that were occurring there. It reminds me, the Trump and Epstein combo reminds me of the story of Prophet Eli and his two sons, Phineas and Hophni. And this is in 1 Samuel, the book of 1 Samuel in the Holy Bible. And I know you're probably thinking, what is this? What is this? It's not political. Promise you it will all tie together. But yeah, so in this story, there once was a prophet. He was a priest himself. His name was Eli, and he had two sons, and those two sons were also priests over a temple. And these two sons used their position of power, money, privilege to SA women, or to have relations with women, and to take the best portions of the money, which was the sacrifices that were given to the temple for atonement of the people's sins. And they had such depraved acts that it angered God so greatly that he sent another prophet to warn their father, Eli, that if he did not correct his sons and did what was right, to have his sons not to do what they were doing to his people, that he was going to pass judgment on their city of Shiloh. There are so many demonic things that occurred between Trump and Epstein, and this temple that he had, it just substantiates how deep this web really went into. And there's so many more documents and so many more testimonials that are coming about in regards to this temple and this island. It's some really deep things that we're going to talk about and listen to on today. Do you know Donald Trump had an older brother that died many years ago, mainly related to his drinking addiction? And he has a niece, Donald Trump's niece, Mary. That's his brother's daughter, and they don't get along with each other. You know, I've never really seen him and his brother in pictures from the past, but Jeffrey Epstein and him, they were like brothers. You can't see Donald without seeing Jeffrey. I've seen so many pictures collected now from over the years that they're pulling up from archives, where everywhere Trump was on his rise to the presidency, there was Jeffrey Epstein. So I really do consider these two more than just compadres. They were really like soul brothers. They both shared in the same depravity, the depravity of undermining women and children sexually. And Let's listen to this.
It was sexy, didn't she? It was very sexy to be Didn't she say that?
So, sir, I just want to confirm, it's your testimony that E. Jean Carroll said that she loved being sexually assaulted by you? And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true.
Luther Campbell, a.k.a. Uncle Luke, talks about how in the early 1990s, he was at Donald Trump's people there who he thought were underage girls. He described the scene as looking like it was from Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Campbell. He said he saw drug use and he had to just get out.
And if you've never seen the movies Eyes Wide Shut starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, it is a movie dealing with the secret occult and SA. And also at the very end of the movie, there's still an unresolved mystery of where the characters of Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, their child is actually taken away. A small little girl is taken away by two unidentified men that were a part of this secret society. And it was very dark. Very dark. This movie is so dark to where days before the release of the film, the director was found dead after going back and forth with the financiers in the production company and the movie studio. They didn't want certain things released with this film. I wonder why. But yeah, that's still a unsolved mystery. Even his death, it's like, why did it lead up to his death just a few days before a film that he considered to be one of his greatest works? And this is the same director that made films like The Shining. He considered this his best work. Again, the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump, it reminds me again of them being brothers. And I did study theology somewhat, and it was reminded to me, really it was inspired to me by God, that what's going on right now, including the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi with the FBI director, Kash Patel, and many United States citizens that voted for Donald Trump and they supported him along the way. Now, all of these individuals that are now aware of what has happened, many of them are still supporting President Trump. And even with all of the knowledge, even with them knowing that 1 + 1 = 2, with the evidence, with the documentation, with the witnesses, and they are still supporting someone based off of politics, telling others, oh, you need to be pragmatic about this. Hasn't he done so much for the country? In their opinion, oh, he's doing so much, we need to let him finish his job. God does not need anyone to help him be God. And especially individuals like this. And what is so sickening is the reason why I'm saying that Pam Bondi with the Department of Justice, FBI, Kash Patel, and individuals that are still supporting Donald Trump, you all remind me of Prophet Eli, the one that winked at his 2 sons that did evil, and you didn't heed to the warning of God. And just because you had a heart for your 2 sons, and especially for your son, you have a heart for Trump, and you can't fathom and you can't release the support of a man because of your politics, or because you feel as if you can get things the way you want them just right, then you'll let go. But again, God sends warnings before he sends destruction.
6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, this is our first Jewish president. Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
So that's another reason why this connects, this story of Eli and his two evil, wicked sons connects to Trump as well, because many people are not hip to this, but yes, he is converted to Judaism a while ago. He actually studied back in 2002, 2003, and he admitted that in his own autobiography. So this is the story about Eli and his sons. Now, Eli was very old, and he heard everything his sons did to all of Israel, and how they laid with the women who assembled at the door of the tabernacle meeting. So he said to them, why do you do such things? So yes, the sons of the high priest Eli were Hophni and Phinehas, and were guilty of having sexual relationships with women who served at the entrance of the tabernacle or the tent of the meeting, as recorded in the book of Samuel 1. The reason why this connects to both President Trump and Epstein, it was an abuse of power. They were priests, and they used their position of authority to exploit women and children sexually. They had a context of wickedness. It was sexual immorality, part of a large pattern of corruption. And this is the reason why I titled Jeffrey Epstein the High Priest of Sin, because this temple that he had on his island has unveiled so many pieces of evidence and photographs.
And then we move on to the section titled Children. The children section kicks off with the story I mentioned earlier, Uncle F makes potty. Then there's a child's drawing of what's possibly a wedding with a bunch of crying children in the background and a little song written over the drawing which contains the line, "Where is the groom? He's in the lady's room." Was this child aware of what a creep Epstein was? I don't know. A lot of the writing is difficult to read. It does also look like there's possibly the figure of a child drawn in the belly of the possible bride. There are a few other things in this section, photos of what are possibly the children of friends or relatives playing the piano and things like that.
I downloaded the files from Epstein from the DOJ, and I'm going through these, and I don't think enough people are talking about how much infrastructure and how upsetting these files are. This is an unfinished room where it was just a stack of twin mattresses. Just tubs and tubs of hygiene products and cleaning products. And not enough people are talking about it, but it's not just little girls, it is little boys. It is not just teenagers, it is infants. It is toddlers. I have the mock-ups for the island in here. Maps of it. I think everyone is focused too much on the Trump part of it and not how massive this wall was. How many people were involved, the infrastructure, the money put into this, the sheer amount of children and people that were victimized.
I think what you're going to find is going to be very, very upsetting. Don't call me. I'm not going to comment. I'm not going on TV and talking about this. This is very dangerous to sit on. If you decide to pursue this in the media, be very, very careful. These people are dangerous.
Now, again, this island is located within the Caribbean, very close to Bahamas. It's called Little St. James, and he named it Epstein's private island. He had entertained many celebrities, many stars, many politicians, and movers and shakers, influential people. And this temple has two what would be considered like owls, golden owls on the top, along with a temple that looks very much like a synagogue. And within it, it has these dirty mattresses that were in a corner of a bolted down front entrance of the door. And this is the floor to ceiling wooden bookshelf, which I believe was used for candles or probably different type of deities in my opinion, because when they went in there, they found no books. So at one time, either it was just there for ornate reasons or maybe purposes of using it for a bookshelf later. But since this looks like some type of ritualistic setting, I doubt books were on there. And this is very much indicative of the Baal and Molech. If you go back and look at my recent video of Baal administration, BAAL administration, it was going to give you a whole lot of background information on why I consider Donald Trump and Jared Kushner all a part of this Baal administration, along with his daughter. It is very dark, it is very deep, and it is having to deal with the end times.
Not a single person talking about the fact that on Epstein Island there is a temple used to worship Moloch. Out of all the demons in existence, this is the most disgusting one by a landslide. More people need to be aware of this because this is what's really happening behind closed doors, not some Ryan Garcia publicity stunt crap. This is what's actually happening. Moloch is the demon that specializes in child sacrifice, and this is what these elites are all worshiping. They've been flying out to this island, getting together with their parties, going inside of this temple and performing rituals involved in what I just explained. By the way, guys, this is the exact same thing that's being worshipped during the red heifer rituals. Moloch is the demon of the cow or bull. That's the image it represents. And I want you guys to really understand this. People in Israel have been worshiping Moloch forever. It's talked about even in Leviticus 18:21. Let me clarify. It has been happening so long that it is even mentioned in the Bible, and the Bible tells us not to sacrifice or give children to Moloch. This is how common it is and how long it's been happening. The whole Epstein files, Epstein list thing, it will always come back to this, and you guys can maybe not believe me now, but you are my witness on this. Once the rest of these files come out, it is.
And if you go back and watch one of my videos, I highlight the prophetic updates that were occurring earlier on this year when they were preparing to sacrifice those red heifers that were actually coming from the United States. And you'll find that video right here with this image 666 Fifth Avenue, where I did a deep dive on the first video about Jared Kushner. Yeah, so these red heifers are to be used for temple sacrifice. However, notice how Jesus Christ, he didn't go through the red heifer. He went through the lamb, the sheep, the lamb that is pure, that is innocent. One thing I did notice about Jeffrey Epstein's temple was the ceilings, and he had many zodiac signs on there, but I noticed that he had a lot of centaurs. And I know that has a lot to do with Greek mythology, but I wanted to know the real background on why he emphasized so many centaurs. Well, centaurs have a symbolism, and they are half human, half horse, creatures who are part to their animal nature dominating their lives. It also says their myths are mainly about conflicts caused between when they are drunk or because desire and lust. Centaurs were slaves to their animalistic urges. And again, this temple that was perched on the very highest point of this island, which is also indicative to temples, had these centaurs, and that's very demonic. Half man, half animals that were lust to their desires. You know, that's what that temple was all about.
The story of Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, is found in the first book of Samuel in the Bible. Here is a summary of their story. Hophni and Phinehas were the sons of Eli, a priest in Israel and a judge over the people. They served as priests in the tabernacle at Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. However, Hophni and Phinehas were corrupt and acted unfaithfully in their duties as priests. They would take advantage of their position by greedily seizing the best portions of the sacrifices brought by the people, including fat portions and even the raw meat before it was offered to God. Furthermore, they engaged in sexual immorality with the women who served at the entrance of the tabernacle. Their actions were in direct violation of the laws and expectations of the priesthood. God sent a prophet to confront Eli and warn him about the sins committed by his sons. The prophet declared that because of their corrupt behavior, God would judge the entire house of the Philistines, and hoping for victory, the Israelites brought the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. However, they were defeated, and the Philistines captured the ark and took it to their own land. When Eli heard the news, he immediately fell backward from his seat and died. Hophni and Phinehas were also killed in battle, just as the prophet had warned.
In America,
Their
we
deaths
have
marked
a
the
problem.
fulfillment of the judgment pronounced
We have
upon
a
Eli's
grave
house.
problem, because although I'm not saying that Jeffrey Epstein's temple on his island was used for good, positive purposes, and these women that were being abused, they were in serving his temple. However, he created the temple for evil. And the acts of both Trump and Epstein over these decades show that they are representation of what Eli and Eli's sons, Phineas and Hophni, were. They were evil. They took, and also too, it also brings up not only the sexual immorality, but also too the money. There is so much money that is supporting this entire structure of a system. And a lot of these individuals that are involved with these crimes are billionaires. Billionaires that take tax breaks that strip the citizens that are full taxpayers, that are working everyday jobs, and they're robbing the system. They're taking the fat of the land that should be going to the people, that should be going to God's people, into his house, but they're taking it for themselves, and they're doing for it evil. That's also another representation of why both Epstein and Donald reminds me of Phineas and Hophni. And Eli, again, he represents the United States of America and the Department of Justice, the supporters, the general attorney. They all represent not doing the right thing, with the warning that is heeding to them to convict this man, get this man out. People have been trying to convict this man for crimes he actually committed. Look what they're doing to District Attorney Fani Willis from Atlanta, Georgia. She was able to put a case together and found him guilty of voting fraud. The same thing in New York. Letitia James, the general attorney, she was able to find him guilty of tax evasion of upwards towards over $325 million that he stole from the citizens of New York. And you still have people that are willing to go to the gauntlet for this man and not heed the warning of that destruction will come shortly after if you do not do the right thing and hold this man accountable. And the last thing that ties Trump towards this story of Prophet Eli and his two sons, Phineas and Hophni, is the Ark of the Covenant. So when they disobeyed God, and Prophet Eli, again, that represents America, did not do what was right and reprimanded his two sons, destruction came upon the city of Shiloh, and the Israelites were overtaken by their enemy, the Philistines. And one of the spoils of war was that they were able to collect the Ark of the Covenant, which is the archetype of God with them. That archetype was a representation that God's protection was with them. Without that Ark of the Covenant being in the midst of the people had no protection. They were like open sesame to any enemy that would come over them. And it took them a long time, not until David would come along, maybe about 30 or 40 years later, would the people of Israel be able to regain the Ark of the Covenant. And that's when they had the protection of God back with them. this next part about it is going to blow your mind. Remember how I said how important the Ark of the Covenant was in relation to the story of Eli, Phineas, and Hophni. And remember, I told you how important the protection of the Ark of the Covenant is or was to the people of Israel back in those days, and how sacred it was, and how it took the shedding of blood and wars to regain this Ark of the Covenant because it's so symbolic. Guess what?
Trump's replica of the Ark of the Covenant at Mar-a-Lago.
That's
Pretty
just like
wild.
And it's almost exactly the replica of what it's assumed to have been look like, you know.
Well, I mean, I think that's a recreation based on biblical accounts.
Absolutely.
Very strange.
Well, maybe Trump can take us and show it to him.
Now, do you see how closely tied Donald Trump is to this story? And Jeffrey Epstein and his temple, and how all of this really connects together? That is strange. That he had a replica placed in his home at Mar-a-Lago. You want something so, and even though that's not the real Ark of the Covenant, it's an archetype. It's a replication. It's a representation of something sacred and holy, and you want that protection, and you know how sacred and holy it is, even if other people around you don't. You know the secrets of this oracle piece, and yet you still do depraved things, and depraved things have occurred there in that mansion under your watch. You've never repented of it, and you continue to go on, and you don't want to be reprimanded, and you don't want the people to hold you in contempt. And the people of this nation that are in these positions do not hold you of contempt, and neither do your supporters. Do you see how wicked and evil that is? And how closely these things in politics and religion, they closely align and parallel with each other? America has a problem, and it's a problem with deplorable sins and depravity and sexual immorality, and especially with our children. And they use religion and politics and social circles of power and money to be able to feed onto their sickness. And a lot of people that are supporting Trump, they have their own hidden demons. And that's the reason why they don't want to be the ones that call them out, call him out, call this circle out. It's because they are doing the same things. You have women that went into the booths and voted for Trump twice, knowing that the first time he ran for office, they heard him saying that he went around and believed that you can grab women by their genitalia, because they are already conditioned to live and be financially supported by men that abuse their daughters, abuse their grandkids, abuse their nieces and nephews, and they say nothing about it because they are too dim-witted and too lazy to go out and figure things out for themselves. They would rather sell their children to the men in their homes than to actually go out there and earn a living and work. They would rather go to hell and live comfortably for a few decades and burn in hell for eternity than to call out the depravity that's going on in their home for generations, all because of politics and proximity to power. They almost crucified Tim Tebow when he started to bring awareness to America's issue. Is this a global issue? Absolutely. But I'm talking about America and the people that are in our country. He has lost many friends, many circles. He's gone to the Capitol. He's spoken about this thing because it is so deep-seated. There's going to be so many things that unravel from this case that even with him being Trump allegedly being there to witness the murder of his own infant child that was produced possibly, allegedly, by a 13-year-old, and the child's body being dropped in the middle of Lake Michigan. And yet he was elected to be the most pro-life president in history. Right? That's what they said. But we now know that's allegedly untruthful. Please share this. Please like, please subscribe to the channel. There's so many other things that are getting ready to come about with many other videos. And I'm still preparing this video about Marina Abramovich. She is the artist that is very much into the occult. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I hope to look at your comments and read your comments and interact in the comment section. Thank you for supporting the channel.